everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Big at the Back podcast. This is season 2, episode 24.
He's nailed it.
I nailed it. I knew I was going to get it right one of these days. I am joined by Matthew Higgins. Matt, how are you?
I am very well, thanks. You know what? As you started doing the intro, I was like, he hasn't asked me what episode number it is. This is going to be interesting. But yeah, you smashed it. Good start. We're off to a flyer. But yeah, it's Monday evening. Another weekend in the books. One game left to go in this game week. It's been good so far. So let's hope that continues.
I'm not sure. I don't feel as elated as I necessarily should. So I guess we can get to that. Just in terms of what we're going to cover in terms of today's pod, though. So some really key questions. So first, should we be happy with the Rashford triple captain so far? Is it worth trebling up on City for the upcoming double game week? Is Haaland an auto-captain now for the double game week and for the rest of the season? What do we do with Manchester United assets moving forward? Which assets are highly owned and most likely to be rotated in Fantasy Premier League? Quite a lot to cover, and there's going to be an awful lot of debate and discussion. So I guess let's start with the week, because we both triple captain Rashford this week. So I think you tweeted that out earlier. I'm on 65 points and you're on 68. And I have 3 players left to play in Shaw, Martinez and Rashford. How about yourself?
Same with me, with the 3 to play. Shaw, Rashford and Weghorst is my third. So, I mean, I wasn't as badly hampered by the Man United concession late in the game, because obviously you lost 2 clean sheets through that. I only lost the 1. But my boy Wout doing nothing for me. The only potential saving grace is that it looks like he might be playing again on Wednesday, because there was no Martial in the squad on Saturday. So we'll see what happens there. But I think overall, it's a fairly decent week. I think we're both well above average as it stands. So I don't think we can complain too much. But you seem to be less thrilled with how things have gone.
Yeah, I guess the frustration is that there was such an easily avoidable cock-up from Casemiro that lost Man U the clean sheets. Both Shaw and Martinez were on for bonus points alongside Rashford. So that would have changed it from a good week to a great week, because that's probably about 10 points down where I feel like I could have been. I didn't take any hits, so I'm not sure I should be complaining that much. And Rashford triple captain is an interesting concept, because at the moment we're 1 game down and he's got 1 goal, 1 assist and 2 bonus points. So far, I think it's fair to say we can probably consider it a successful triple captain, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would take that from the 2 games. So he's got that from 1. I'm very happy with that. I think as long as he doesn't go and get sent off on Wednesday or something like that, I think we can all sort of breathe a sigh of relief. I did read something this week which sort of puts it into perspective when it comes to triple captaincy. Out of 38 weeks of a season, it's essentially having 1 extra player. Like it should mean so little in the grand scheme of things, and it's probably not worth the amount of time and effort and thought that goes into it when you compare it to things like transfers and wild cards and free hits and things like that, because that's where the big points can be won. But it just feels so much bigger than that.
You can get an extra player of your choosing for an extra game of your choosing, and it can really, really make or break a season for you. Last season, we had Salah, game week 29, getting 28 points on his triple captaincy. We had KDB getting 30 points when a lot of people triple captained him with 36. In previous seasons, there have been some really, really massive scores and swings in that triple captaincy trip. On the other hand, for 3 or 4 years ago, or 4, I think it was, Leroy Sané in the best form of his life. Pep was playing him every game, so I triple captained him. He was on the bench, came on the 89th minute, got 1 point, then before the second game transferred to Bayern Munich. 1 point for a triple captain from Leroy Sané. There was a season, I think 1 or 2 before that, where it was like Salah on the form of his life, Trent in the form of his life, Mane in the form of his life, on a double game week. Very, very easy games. I went for triple captain Mane, and Mane got injured in the first 8 minutes or something, whereas Salah and Trent both got 20 plus points. So I feel like I've been burned enough by the triple captaincy chip. What's your history with it?
Hit and miss. I think I had Salah as well last season. I was burnt by Sane before, like you were. It does feel nice when it comes off. It's just like, yeah, it's a real weight off your shoulder because everyone, like we say, is this big thing that everyone builds up as a huge, can be a turning point in people's seasons, really. So I'm very relieved. I don't, like I say, I don't think it's as important as it's made out to be, but it is very nice when it does come off, especially when it's game one in a double and it's already paid off. And now he's got to go into a second game against the now managerless Leeds United side, which will be an interesting one because sometimes you see a bit of an improvement under a caretaker manager, but it will be very interesting to see how that second game goes on Wednesday night. I personally think the way Leeds have been defending lately, their performances in general have been pretty poor, but you'd like to think he bags at least another goal.
You'd certainly hope so. I'm really, really disappointed that Marsh is having to leave before we could get the whole crowd singing "Stop Crying, Yank Lampard." That would have been spectacular. And the nickname has just come out. So he's been fired right before that nickname was sung all around the stadium. I'm gutted. But yeah, that's my perspective on these. But I think the triple captaincy is objectively a success. And just to use a comparison point, loads of people used it on Haaland in game week 20. You got 8 points. Rashford's already on, I think, it's
12.
12. Rashford, yeah, 36 divided by 3. Brilliant.
Quick maths.
Rashford's already on 12, so that's already success for both of us using triple captaincy without, he's going to get, let's say he bottoms out and he gets 2 points against Leeds. That's still a total of 42 points for our triple captain. That is absolutely awesome. So I'm very happy with that decision right now.
Yeah, I think, well, like I say, unless he gets a red card, we're quids in on the triple captaincy chip. I did just want to mention actually as well that one thing I didn't mention with my team score for this week, with John Stones not playing, I'm due Tyreek Mitchell to come off the bench with 0 points. So buzzing for that.
Yeah, all of my players have been absolutely shocking this week, apart from Marcus Rashford, which is a bit of and Kepa, of course.
You finally picked the right keeper.
Finally, yeah, not Ward on 2 points with my bench. But still got Shaw and Martinez and Rashford still to play, so still positive around that. Yeah, I think that's partly why I'm a bit bummed out. I don't have another player that's done very well. Martinelli 1, Odegaard 2, Haaland 2, De Bruyne bench 1, Darwin Nunez 1 or 2, sorry. So it just feels a bit samey and frustrating. I think
the only difference for me is having Kane in there picking up that goal yesterday. But yeah, it's similar to me. Trippier 2, Almiron 2, KDB 1, Martinelli 1, Weghorst 1, Haaland 2. It's just a very obviously when the triple captaincy comes off, it can make a big change. When you look at the average for the week is 37, like that is quite low. So and also like you said, both of us not taking any hits. I haven't taken any transfers, so I've banked that one. So it feels like overall I'm a real net positive this week. Overall rank now just over 1.1 million, so I'm more green arrows, so I'm heading in the right direction. I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks I can finally break into that top 1 million and get my season back on track.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm overall ranked about 700k at the moment, so again, it's not bad, but it's not anywhere near where I really want to be. Let's talk then about Manchester City, because it feels like it's just Pep against the world at the moment.
Yeah.
He fell out with Cancelo. He seems to be falling out with all of his players. De Bruyne was not rested. They haven't played a game for a week. De Bruyne was rotated because he was out of form. And oh my God, they looked worse without him in the scene. I think it was raised on another podcast that I listened to earlier, but Man City feel like a team very much in transition. Like if you look at their squad, you could say it's the same as Liverpool, but without the injuries. it's the same players that have brought them so much success, but these players are essentially over the hill a little bit. Haaland's brilliance has made up for what's been a very, very poor year for them, in the same way that Darwin Nunez is not Erling Haaland. If those were swaps, we'd probably be saying very different things about City and about Liverpool. But I think they are looking really, really poor and they're struggling at the moment. I'm not sure I want a third City player for the double, which feels kind of crazy to say. What's your take on it?
I don't know. I feel like I have to have 3 for the double. Purely because I'm on 3 at the moment. One of them being John Stones, who needs to come out. So it feels like I'd be stupid not to change him for another City defender when they double. So in theory, they've got a higher ceiling than any other defender that I could possibly bring in. So I feel like it would be a complete waste not to. Yes, they are probably almost certainly going to blank in 28. So it would be a short-term switch. But I feel like I'm in a good enough position with the rest of my squad to navigate 25 and 28 by taking that one transfer, because the rest of the weeks I can make up for it. So, and their fixtures after this double are good as well. Forest and Bournemouth are their next 2 after the double. So they are tasty fixtures. I mean, I know Pep's out-pepped himself by benching KDB. And like you say, they looked awful. But like the other thing as well to think of is like the centre halves. We've all said about Kanji being great, but bringing Ake into centre half, and they had Diaz and Laporte on the bench. I mean, what was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, I have no idea. Laporte has been one of the best centre backs in the league. Diaz, like for many years, Diaz, like God knows, after that first season, Pep just kind of went, "You've been amazing for me. I don't want you anymore. Goodbye."
Yeah,
absolutely crazy. So I think, and when you look at Man City, I can't think of a player from their size that I would necessarily want to bring in. Would you, on a hit, lose Luke Shaw for a Manchester City defender?
not at this rate, no. Just Shaw's Mr. Consistent at the moment, really. Him and Trippier, I think, are the 2 first defenders anyone should have in their teams at the moment.
Yeah, I have that scenario because I've gone already, because of price changes, Martinelli to Saka. So that was my free transfer. So at the moment, I'm in a situation of, do I ditch Shaw or Martinez and get a Manchester City defender in? So it would be an Ake or a Kanji. Now, I'm thinking if they had one game, which was Aston Villa at home, I'd say that's probably not worth it. And the other game is away to Arsenal. So I'm really thinking it's not worth doing. In the midfield, I'm not dropping Saka and Odegaard. I'm not going to drop KDB. I'm not going to drop Rashford. And I'm not going to drop Andreas. If anything, I feel bad for not starting Andreas. In fact, I might start Andreas over Darwin Nunez this week. But that's TBC. Darwin has Everton at home. Which, God knows.
Dice ball, mate. Dice ball.
Dice ball indeed, but Darwin Nunez is like the perfect counter because he is just chaos embodied. But it's all very, very tricky is the point at the moment. And I think there's no options that are currently making me want to consider Pep Roulette because they're not winning consistently.
Yeah, that's the problem with them at the moment. I think it all depends on your situation. Like with you, it's probably not worth it because you'd have to take a hit and then you're already on the back foot despite the double. One of them is Arsenal, who have been, like, last weekend excluded, very impressive. They've performed well against City as well. But in my instance, it makes sense for me to bring someone in. So it really is horses for courses. You know your team, you know what you need. So if you feel like you're going to benefit, and like fantasy football is a game of risks and chances and difficult decisions. Everyone's got their own opinions. If you feel like City are going to do well in this double, they're going to maybe come back fighting and back with a bang because they need to now. They could have closed the gap to Arsenal at the top and they've absolutely fucked it. So they need to come out firing, and maybe Pep's going to stick a rocket up their arse and send them out in these next 2 games, and they'll come out all guns blazing and blast Villa away 5-0. You never know.
it'll be very interesting to watch. But I think for me, I'm not going to take a hit to bring one of them in, is my thinking at the moment, even though they've got a double. Let's talk then more specifically about Erling Haaland, because another blank, don't get me wrong, he scored a hat-trick like a week ago, but he's blanked in 3 of his last 4, I think it is. I think we may have jumped the gun by saying just always captain Haaland. We're so used to Mo Salah over the past 2 years, just being the automatic captain, that I think there is alternatives for Erling Haaland moving forward. My perspective, though, is you're nuts not to captain him in 23. What do you think?
Yeah, if you don't captain him this week, you really have to get your head checked out. It's Haaland in. Like, if you had Haaland against Villa at home, you'd probably say he's captain anyway. Bearing in mind, Villa have just conceded 4 to Leicester, who haven't exactly been free scoring this season. So if like you probably maybe argue Rashford against Leeds, Haaland against Villa, they're similar sort of fixtures. You'd probably be having that debate. But the fact that he then has an extra 90 minutes to score more goals, it's an absolute no-brainer. And then you're probably keeping it on him for the 2 weeks after that as well, because you've got Forest and Bournemouth. And there's no one else really that I'd probably consider captaining Kane against West Ham, to be honest with you, just because unlike you, who refused to play Kepa against Liverpool, I would captain Kane against West Ham, because 1, he always scores against us, and 2, it would sort of numb the pain a little bit when he inevitably bags a brace.
I actually think Kane is a brilliant captain for game week 26, because Manchester City play against Newcastle and Spurs play against Wolves. So I think there's a very good chance next week I actually take a hit and go move Darwin over to Kane, even though it will be I've got you for 4 weeks, then I have to move you out. I think it'll be really worth it. That's my thought process at the moment. So
I don't know what you're talking about, mate. Spurs have Wolves. They've got big Craig Dawson, as you found out as a Liverpool fan this weekend.
I mean, the less said about Liverpool, the better at the moment. Absolute shambles. We weren't even okay. So to our credit, unlike Brighton, we looked like the better team for most of the game, but Wolves just played it perfectly. Completely took us by surprise, hit us on the counter, targeted Joel Matip, who was terrible. Why are we talking about Liverpool? Let's not talk about Liverpool.
But the thing is, as Jurgen Klopp said, it was only 2-0 because their third goal didn't count.
It didn't count. I mean, what he was saying is it's the first time the ball crossed the line, but what he actually said was, we didn't concede, it doesn't really count, which is like, okay, Trump, like, calm down. Back to the question though, Erling Haaland. Do you think we jumped the gun? Is he an automatic captain choice until game week 28?
For me, well, maybe not until 28, because, like you say, that Newcastle game could be very tricky.
Palace could be a bit.
Oh, I don't know. I'd still back him at Palace. But then again, City have like a weirdly shit record against Palace. So
and Spurs have Forest at home. So Kane.
Let me see. Have City played Palace yet this season? Yes, they won 4-2. So
did Haaland get a hat-trick in that? He probably did, didn't he?
Probably. I'll find out.
But yeah, I think from my perspective, Erling Haaland is still a great captaincy option, but not an automatic captain. And I think we can open the captaincy conversation up a little bit moving forward.
Yeah, probably. I think the emergence of Rashford has really... Yeah, Haaland did score a hat-trick against Palace. 62nd, 70th and 81st minute. It was a very quick hat-trick as well. But yeah, I think like with the emergence of Rashford, he's always going to have that sort of... You're going to have that debate internally, whether it's Rashford or Haaland, or even if you've got Kane, he's always going to be in the conversation because he's just Mr. Consistent this season, really. But then you've got the question around United blanking in 25 and 28. So Rashford, does he feature into your long-term plans and United assets in general? I don't know what your plans are with all your United assets.
So Rashford for me is a hold. I'm keeping him. He's his next games are Leeds away and Leicester at home, two very leaky sides. And then game week 26, they've got Liverpool. Like, I mean, if there's ever a game Rashford's going to score a lot of goals, and then it's Southampton. So 28 is when I'd probably move Rashford out, but not before that. So I'm going to hold him over the break. Other United assets, interesting though, so I'll probably look to ditch both Shaw and Martinez by 28. Shaw, I think, will make way next week because he'll free up some money. Martinez, I'll probably hold on for an extra couple of weeks or so. But the plan is to get Darwin Nunez up to Kane, which means I'll probably have to take Shaw down to maybe a Rico Lewis for 3.9, potentially. But that feels like a bit of a wait and see kind of moment.
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with you. Weghorst is the one that's got to come out for me, probably this week. As I've got 2 free transfers, it makes sense to do that along with the Stones one potentially. But I want to get rid of Almiron as well because his form's bottomed out now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rashford is definitely the one that stays throughout all of this period as we go through both of these doubles. Like we've both said, deadheading that team into 28, he's probably the one you're going to be keeping him around afterwards anyway. Because if we're looking at free hitting wildcard in 29 or 30, then yeah. So if you're keeping him for 29, then it makes sense that he'd be one of your survivors throughout all this blank period. So he's definitely staying around for me. Question for you: is it about time that they updated the fixture difficulty rating? Because Liverpool away is still a 5. And that is not a 5 at the moment.
Absolutely, that should be a 1. Like even like Nottingham Forest at home is rated as a 2. Like Liverpool away should be a 1, as far as I'm concerned at the moment.
I don't know why they have the 1 because nothing ever goes down as a 1. I'm pretty sure Derby in 06 when they didn't get a point for months on end, that wouldn't have even gone down as a 1.
What's quite interesting is I think is quite weird to see. At the beginning of the season, United were the easiest team to play against in the division. And you could argue Liverpool were the toughest. And that was the first half of the season. Second half of the season, that's just swapped around. It's really, really interesting to see how those two clubs, one is perceived to be on the up and one is perceived to be on the down. I'm not sure it's fair given the amount of spends from both of them, but I just find it interesting. I don't understand, though, how Liverpool's midfielders have become so dreadful when 6 months ago we were almost winning every single title. It makes no sense.
You love to see it, though.
No, you don't.
Trust me, you do. It's fantastic. When we were chatting on Saturday, I was watching the United game. You were obviously watching the Liverpool game and just getting the updates from you as your slow descent into madness. And you're like, I need to just stop watching this and watch United instead.
Yeah, I was like, I've got Rashford triple captain. And I took a 15-minute break from Liverpool, turned on United, then was like, what am I doing? I'm a Liverpool fan. I need to be watching Liverpool. So I turned back to the torture, and then Wolves scored their third.
It's hilarious. I'm going to be honest with you. It makes a nice change to be the one that, even though we are still in a relegation scrap, with unbeaten in 3 now in all competitions, we're flying.
I think it's a long way to go, and your next 2 are Chelsea at home and Tottenham away. So I wouldn't put you down as winning the next 2.
Oh, no.
On FPL, there are some players that are just rotation risks, and highly owned players, I think they're worth talking about. The obvious one being Martinelli, who is in a bit of a rubbish run of form. Now, Trossard came on against Everton and was awful. He was dreadful. However, so I think Martinelli does start the 2 in the double, However, I think there's a very good chance he comes off at 55, 60 minutes in one or both of those games. So I think that's why, for me, he's out of the team. I want a player that's going to play for Arsenal. And I don't think Martinelli is that guy at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's the most likely of the 3 Arsenal midfielders to be rotated. It wouldn't surprise me if he starts one and Trossard starts the other. So I'm in that similar boat at the moment where I do want him out. I know you've taken that. You've done it early doors and gone to Saka. I want to get Odegaard in for him because I feel like he's probably the least of the rotation risk because he plays more central, whereas Saka, Martinelli and Trossard all tend to play wider. So I think he's probably, and he's captain, which also you have to take into account. So he's probably the most unlikely to be rotated. Not that it's impossible, of course. So yeah, I mean, I'm in this sort of situation at the moment where there's a few things I want to tinker with, but it's we've got to be looking longer term than just the next few weeks at the moment. So that's sort of my risk at the moment. And then obviously similar we can say about any City asset at the moment as well. I know you were sort of toying with the idea of Mahrez or Grealish, or now even KDB's not safe. So I just don't know where we stand with these City assets.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to bring a third in for the double. I just don't trust it at all. Hold on, I was thinking though, if I've got Shaw now, and next week I'm planning to go Shaw and Darwin to Lewis and Kane, would it not be worth me going Shaw to Lewis this week as Lewis has a double? I've just had that thought. In terms of
yeah, it probably does because either way you'd have to be taking a hit, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the -4 anyway, and I want to free up the funds to get Kane in next week. So I think I will do that. But anyway, back to what you said. I totally agree. We had the City discussion. Jack Grealish, since the break, has got 3 assists and a goal. Not awful. But
he was probably City's brightest attacking spark at Spurs as well for me.
He played well. He kind of frustrated figure, but he played well. So I always feel like as soon as you get Mahrez in, Pep's going to turn and he's not going to start. If you're Phil Foden, are you looking to leave at the moment? Because if you're not playing games and you're Phil Foden's age and as good as he is, I'm looking to leave to get regular first team football.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in this double. Apparently he was ill, so that was why he didn't play at the weekend. So you would like to think he'd get some minutes at some point over these next 2 games. But yeah, this is the risk you run when you're at a team like City. Obviously, they're always looking to improve their squad, which makes sense. They're always going to be spending big money. And they have a wealth of talent in those similar sort of attacking positions, even when the likes... Like when you look at the likes of the players that have left over the last few years, they just have like a never-ending conveyor belt. Then they bring in youngsters as well. Like if you look at people like Cole Palmer as well, who sort of played a few games here and there, there's always someone waiting to take your place. So you're just one injury or one lack of form away from being dropped out of the side for a considerable period of time. So all these players have to consider these things when it comes to times like contract renewal and transfer windows. But the thing is, when you're looking at a player like Foden, who's going to be able to afford him?
It depends. How long has he got in his contract? I'm not sure.
I have no idea, to be honest with you. But like the clubs that could afford him, I mean, Chelsea are throwing money at everyone at the moment, but as of the summer, they're not going to be able to use their tactic of long contracts. So surely that can't be sustainable. And we haven't even mentioned the big news with City today that who knows what's going to be happening, the potential financial penalties and points deductions and things like that. That will be an interesting thing to see how that plays out over the next few weeks and months.
I think that's a red herring. Phil Foden contracted till summer 2027, so there's no way he's going anywhere. But I think that's a red herring and they'll be found not guilty and nothing will happen. And also, it feels like they're like 10 years too late with this, right? Don't get me wrong, City have spent ridiculous amounts of money many years in a row, but at the moment Chelsea are the biggest spenders and biggest piss takers with the rules. Man U have been doing it for many years. I don't think City are the right target for this. So that being said, don't get me wrong, they deserve anything coming to them, but I think they'll be found not guilty.
It's one of those interesting things. Like it's basically an open secret that everyone does. But I think City take it to another level with their sponsorship deals and things like that, because it's sponsorship from companies that are owned by the same people that own the club. It's all very Juventus-y, but not to quite the same extent, because I think it was when Juventus signed Ronaldo, it was like Jeep, who were their shirt sponsors at the time, were owned by the same people that owned the club. So they just injected a load of new like sponsorship in the club to cover the signing of Ronaldo. Like it's so blatant that, but they the football authorities are so weak and just bend over to it. So I don't see it changing anytime soon unless they really have to make an example of someone. I know in Italy it's happening with Juventus because they've got their 15-point deduction, but over here there's been very little. And it just goes to show when Italians are actually doing something about it, it must be serious.
Yeah, I remember Chelsea got a transfer ban. That's probably what's going to happen with City. So I don't think a points deduction is going to be on the cards. Back to players, though. I think another one we're missing out on is Nketiah. So if you're looking at bringing Arsenal players in for the double, I'd actually, unless you're planning on wildcarding in between now and game week 28 or so, I'd actually probably avoid Nketiah. Gabriel Jesus is back in training. I think next 2 or 3 weeks, Nketiah is going to be fine. He's going to be starting. But after that, I think he loses his spot to Gabriel Jesus. If you're looking at Nketiah, I would say it's not worth bringing in now because it's just booking in a transfer for 3 weeks' time. And with squads being rotated, with people getting injured all over the place at the moment, I feel like it's only a matter of time before Nketiah's moves out again.
It's a really tough one with Nketiah because he's someone I've been looking at. But like you say, you are sort of booking that transfer in for a few weeks' time. But obviously Arsenal don't blank in 25. They don't blank in 28. So you know that that's the teaser. Like, you know that they're going to be playing these games every week.
Gabriel Jesus will probably be back by 25, 26. So I think that's not... I think you're much better off going for the Arsenal midfielders. So Saka and Odegaard, I've got. Ben White, I've got. Zinchenko's a really good option, actually. He's been out for a lot of the season, but let's not forget how good he's been when he's been playing. I think he's probably the pick of the Arsenal defence. But yeah, I think Nketiah is one I wouldn't move heaven and earth, or I just wouldn't recommend bringing in at the moment.
Can't wait to bring him in and watch him rack up the points.
He's going to score a hat-trick now, isn't he, against Brentford?
Hopefully. Let's see. Because that's what he's one I'm seriously considering as my Weghorst replacement for the next couple of weeks at least. And then just hope Jesus has an injury setback. Bit harsh.
A little bit harsh. A little bit over the top. We could say we wish Gabriel Jesus gets better soon because we don't want to see City win the league.
Oh, you keep saying this. I'm not sure. Can they both lose?
I mean, the alternative is Manchester United come riling up and winning it, and no one wants that.
I'd almost rather prefer that.
Twitter will be uninhabitable for the next year.
It is already. That's what Twitter is. It's a cesspool. Always has been, always will be.
It will be even more uninhabitable if Manchester United win the league. Absolutely no way. So I think Nketiah is definitely one that you want to be avoiding at the moment. Have you got any others that are kind of highly owned that you feel like are traps?
Not necessarily highly owned, but another thing to consider with Man United is Jadon Sancho is now back in contention. I know a lot of people have been sort of flirting with Antony. So it's just something to consider. That if Sancho can come back and find some sort of form, which I hope he does do, because obviously he's gone through a fairly tough time since signing. But I feel like if there's an environment where he can now get some game time and get some form behind him in a Man United side that are playing well, that are getting results, and it seems to have a real feel-good factor around that club at the moment, he's someone that could come back into that side because Antony hasn't exactly been pulling up trees, has he?
No, I mean, we know my opinion on Antony.
He does spin around really well, though.
All he does is spin around, go on one foot and fall over. Like, that's his entire play style. But not quite as bad as Chelsea's new signing, Mudryk, who is basically Adama Traore from Chernobyl. Like, that's what their new signing is. Just all pace, no capability. And they've spent 100 million on him. So he's Antony 2.0.
That's a big shout. The thing is, he looked good when he came on his debut against Liverpool.
Everyone looks good against Liverpool at the moment.
But that's the point, isn't it? That's the real kicker there. So Yeah, he was poor, got hooked at half-time on Friday night. So, I mean, Chelsea, they're obviously a side in transition. They've made so many signings. It's going to take a little while for them to gel. Breaking transfer records every day. Enzo Fernandez coming in for very big money. I don't know. I'm still quite interested to see what João Felix does when he comes back from the suspension, because, like we said last week, he looked good on his debut until that red card. So the thing is, they just still haven't got a recognisable striker, have they? They've still got Kai Havertz playing as a striker, which just is not going to work out for you. I mean, it's weird because they've obviously done the Lukaku thing twice now and it hasn't worked out. But surely they need someone of that ilk, like a traditional striker, someone that can just put the ball in the back of the net, because they really lack that at the moment.
Like a Darwin Nunez kind of type.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Mikel Antonio.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Looking quite far into the future, I'm just trying to look at nice runs of form between, say, game week 30 and game week 35 or so.
Do you know what? This is going to be an interesting shout here. After this week, or maybe even before this week, Everton defence. So I called it on the pod last week.
Oh,
I called it on the pod last week.
Manager bounce. Sorry, we'll disagree here. They had a new manager bounce. I mean, they play Liverpool, so that's going to be 0-0 or 1-0 Everton. Yes, they'll keep a clean sheet in the next game. After that, though, I can't see it.
Leeds at home, Villa at home, Forest away, Brentford at home. I reckon they keep 2 clean sheets in those 4 games.
I reckon they keep 0, but they keep 1 against Liverpool.
That would actually be pretty peak. But, I mean, who'd have thought all it took for Everton to win was to bring in an ex-Burnley manager, and then the goal was scored by an ex-Burnley player and assisted by an ex-Burnley player. Burnley 2.0, it's happening. Get Tarkowski in. You're going to reap the rewards. I'm calling it now.
To be fair, getting any job after Frank Lampard is just the manager's dream, because you had like this agent of chaos that doesn't know what he's doing with no plan and just a big ego. And then you come in as an actual competent manager. I mean, Tuchel went and won the Champions League. So Sean Dyche has probably seen that opportunity and gone, right, there's no way I could do worse than the last guy. So regardless, Everton are going to be better. And I actually think Everton are going to be safe. Southampton are going down this year, aren't they?
What is it? Is it 7 losses in a row now?
Yeah, and they got absolutely thumped 3-0. Like, their goalkeeper lost 3-0 and didn't make a single save, which was quite impressive. Like, you've spoken about, as a goalkeeper, watching him previously, and he's genuinely horrendous. Bazunu, I think his name is.
Yeah, Gavin Bazunu, signed from City in the summer as like this sort of youth drive that they're bringing through, and they've signed a few young players, but it's just not working out for them. He's made some real howlers this season. Don't get me wrong, I don't think there's much he could have done about any of Southampton's goals here, but I just think as a club, obviously the managerial change has done them no favours. Just getting actually 9 defeats in a row.
Did you see the post-match interview from the manager?
I did not know.
Genuinely,
we're fucked.
It was one of the best I've ever seen. Like, everyone watching this knows that this is not my team. I've been nice with these players. I need to stop being nice with these players. I am statistically the best manager in the world at pressing football. I am statistically the best manager in the world at keeping clean sheet. It was hilarious.
Sounds like an old school Rafa Benitez. Rafa facts.
It was very Piers Morgan-y or Donald Trump-y.
God.
Genuinely a work of art. The guy's obviously bought into himself hard without any of the actual capability to back it up.
For someone that's done a good job at Luton for a couple of years.
Exactly. I mean, his CV is almost as good as Frank Lampard's, so we know his Premier League quality.
I don't know. He actually improved Luton. Frank Lampard didn't really improve any of the clubs he managed.
What are you talking about? He took Derby from 6th to 6th.
Exactly.
He took Chelsea from that horrible 4th to that mighty 4th.
One team that it's not exactly sneaking under the radar here, but good fixtures is Arsenal. And I know, like bearing in mind they don't blank in 25, they don't blank in 28, they double this week, and then their fixtures after that is Villa, Leicester, Bournemouth, Fulham, Palace, Leeds. Like, is now like we've said about the teams we're going to be looking to invest in as we head into 28. But you've got to be tripling up on Arsenal now, haven't you?
You absolutely have to be tripled up in Arsenal. I think for me, Martinelli is an avoid and Nketiah is an avoid. But if you look at their assets defensively, you can pick any of them. I think Zinchenko is probably the best one if you can afford him. Going forwards, I think Saka and Odegaard are the ones to go for.
Is Zinchenko a rotation risk though?
Who would he rotate with?
Well, you've had Tomiyasu coming in. Like, I feel like, I mean, I may be completely making this up, but I feel like he hasn't played a lot of 90 minutes.
Zinchenko is not a rotation risk. Ben White maybe is, but he's been starting every game. So Ben White on the right-hand side. Zinchenko's competition is Kieran Tierney, who hasn't started a single Premier League game that Zinchenko's been fit for. So Arteta's been using the same 11 essentially throughout, and he's been very lucky that none of them have got injured. Like, it's one of those seasons when no one seemed to get injured at Arsenal, apart from Gabriel Jesus, but they had great cover for him and then Nketiah. So as long as that continues, I think Zinchenko's fine.
Yeah, fair enough. I thought it was a little bit more. I was just looking, he's played 90, 90, 85, 90. And then before that, I think he was coming back from injury. So
Are you thinking of Ben White?
I don't know. I feel like he's been pretty consistently selected, no?
Well, he has, but he's often subbed off before the 60-minute mark. I say often. If he's subbed off, he has been known to get pulled before 60, and it's cost me a couple of clean sheets. So I think Ben White is more of a rotation risk because Tomiyasu plays on that side as well.
Yeah, he got 59 against Brighton, but they didn't keep a clean sheet there anyway. 45 against United. He played 84 at the weekend, but he's fairly consistently above the 70, around the 70-minute mark, maybe. So, yeah, I feel like either or you could probably be fairly safe with them. Obviously, the other options are Saliba and Gabriel as well, but they're the more expensive too.
If you're looking at one of them, though, Saliba or Gabriel, I think you're going for Gabriel, right?
I mean, for Bant's sake, I'm saying Saliba, but
he scored a couple of goals at the start of the season, but they were like strikers' goals. They weren't defender goals. If you look at Arsenal and corners and stuff, Gabriel's clearly more involved.
Well, overall, Saliba has 5 more points, so the difference is negligible, and Gabriel is 0.1 cheaper. So they're much of a muchness for me. Pick one out of a hat.
Yeah, fair enough. Excellent. Well, look, that's all of the key questions for this week wrapped up. From my side, I'm not sure if I'm going to make that transfer for Lewis or not. What are your thoughts for the week ahead for the double? Captain KDB?
Absolutely not. It's Captain Haaland all the way for me. Currently looking at, so my 11 will be Kepa in goal, a back 3 of Shaw, Trippier, and whoever I bring in to replace Stones, whether that be an Arsenal defender, whether that be Rico Lewis to free up some funds, I'm not sure yet. But I'm going to wait a little while before we do that. It'll be a midfield 4 of Martinelli, Kevin De Bruyne, Marcus Rashford, and Andreas Pereira. And then front 3 of Haaland, Kane, and Weghorst replacement, whoever that may be. I am thinking Nketiah purely because of these little run they've got here, but we'll see what happens there. I'll be tinkering between now and the deadline, but overall I'm pretty happy with how we look. I've got $1 million in the bank, 2 free transfers, so I feel like I'm in a fairly strong position. And I'm hunting you down, Tom.
I mean, you're getting closer. I just looked as well. I can't do Shaw and Darwin Nunez to Kane and Lewis. So back to the drawing board. No transfers for me this week.
How short are you on that one?
Like $1 million or 0.7 or something. So I'm not close. So
nowhere near.
Nowhere near, unfortunately.
So what's your lineup looking like going into the weekend?
Well, so going into the weekend, I'm probably not going to make any more transfers. So it's Kepa in goal, then Trippier, White, and Shaw at the back. Then across the middle, it's Saka, Rashford, KDB, and Odegaard. Up top, it's Mitrovic, Darwin, and Haaland has the captaincy armband on. Andreas is my first sub. I was considering starting him over Darwin, but then you very clearly pointed out to me that Nottingham Forest have more points in the Premier League in 2023 than any other side. So they are the form team in the Premier League at the moment. What a world!
It sickens me. It absolutely sickens me. Worth saying, Keylor Navas had a fantastic debut yesterday. Made a few very good saves to keep the clean sheet there. So, I mean, I don't know how much he is, but if you're wildcarding, could he be a second keeper option?
I don't know. I can't imagine he's cheaper than Danny Ward. Let's have a look. So Keylor, no, he's 4.5. Could be a Kepa replacement, perhaps. But why would you take Kepa out at the moment? That's crazy.
Because they're about to play West Ham, so he ain't keeping a clean sheet there, is he?
Back yourself. Play Wars instead.
No, because they're playing Spurs. No. And as I said, I'm not stupid like you. I am going to put the players in that are playing my team.
One shout out as well for our man, or my guy on this podcast. He is my boy, Kalichi Ian Nacho. 1 goal, 2 assists. He was the answer. It wasn't Veghorst, it was Ian Nacho. And I'm at some point definitely going to own him this season. I don't know when, but it's going to happen.
It'll be like game week 38 when it just is like, oh, 1-0. Why not? Why not hit? What was it? Was it 4 managers triple captained in this week?
Yeah, 4 absolute heroes. I'm
legends of the game.
Most captain player this week as well was Erling Haaland, which is kind of bonkers. So you imagine a lot of people have set and forget and just left it on him.
Yeah, it's got to be some dead teams there, surely.
You'd think so, but then Haaland is normally a great pick against anyone. But yeah, Ian Nacho with more points than anyone this week with 15. So keep your eye on him because he is the one to watch for the rest of the season. That's all from us, folks. Have a great rest of the week. You can find us on Twitter at BigAtTheBack.
Yeah, you can find me at Higgins92. Tom is at TomMadden92. As always, you can find me on the Pretty Bubbles podcast as well if you want to hear more thoughts on all things West Ham, because things are looking slightly better at the moment. Who would have thought a couple of weeks ago that David Moyes would have outlasted 2 Premier League managers, potentially a third as well. You never know, another one could be going soon. So, yeah, thanks again for listening, guys, and we will catch you all next week.